Hi, everybody. I'm Dr. Joseph Mocanu, Managing Partner of Verge HealthTech Fund. And I'd like to thank you and the Emergence 2021 team for giving me the opportunity today to share some thoughts on health tech investment. So let's get started. Now, before I begin, I thought it might be helpful to provide a little bit of background and context on where we're coming from by sharing a little bit about our fund. We're the world's first seed stage only VC fund investing globally in technologies that help expand access, quality, and efficiency to healthcare. We do this primarily in emerging markets within Asia, although we do think that everything that we support has applicability all around the world. We are based in Singapore. We have 11 companies so far, and we're a little bit different than a lot of funds in the region in that we're all ex-entrepreneurs, angel investors, and industry insiders. So we have empathy for the startup journey, and we have a fairly good Rolodex as well for later stage collaborations and hopefully exits with some of the multinationals. I want to level set a little bit on this presentation in that I'm providing a kind of global overview or overarching framework on how we think of healthcare opportunities. It's based on my own opinions and experiences. However, it's not really a specific guide on what companies to pick or a specific strategy to take. And I hope that with that, it's still useful to you all. Given that this is a conference about investing, I figured it might be helpful to start with some numbers. So if we look around the world, these are the countries in blue that spend less than $225 a year per person on healthcare. That is half the world's population, and it's only accounting for 3% of total healthcare spend. So let that sink in a little bit to see what is $225? What does that mean for a health system when you spend that little, and where are the opportunities? If you raise it up to 550, now you're covering 78% of the world and about 15% of spend. So pretty big difference. Up to 1,000, now you're at 82% of the world, 18% of spend. And if you go up to $5,000 per capita per year, then you're at most of the world's population, 93%, and now you're accounting for a big chunk of healthcare spend, almost half. And finally, if we look at the whole world, you'll notice that we just added one of the major countries in the world. And the United States alone is responsible for almost half of global world spend on healthcare for only 4% of the population. And healthcare is growing just about everywhere. And what's crazy is that it's growing at least 5% year on year for 90% of the world's population and 72% of the world's healthcare spend. Almost 2/3 of the world's population is experiencing growth at greater than 10%, but starting from a lower base. This is definitely outpacing GDP growth. If we look at the number of doctors as a proxy for healthcare infrastructure, where can and should this increased spend go? 90% of the world's population doesn't have enough access to doctors. And, this is based on the OECD average. But then what about the quality and the distribution of said doctors? In my mind, this is what I think about when I see a doctor, but this is also a doctor. They both hypothetically graduated from medical school. Similarly, where the doctors are placed really matters. I mean, here, if you have a sore throat, none of these doctors are really going to be able to help you, even though there's a ton of them because they're all plastic surgeons in a small area of Beverly Hills. Gone are the days where doctors are going through the countryside from village to village, actively seeking patients. They generally like to live in wealthy urban centers and have to deal with this when going to and from work, which also is affecting their productivity. A larger question worth asking is whether our doctor-centric infrastructure-heavy health system is still the right model, given most of our disease burden is no longer coming from accidents, which is here in green, or infectious diseases denoted in red, but rather non-communicable and often chronic diseases shown in blue here, like diabetes, cancer, heart disease, stroke, Alzheimer's, and so on. And these diseases slowly kill you over years or even decades. And most of us only see our doctor when things get really, really bad. In developed countries, this question becomes even more pressing. And then, of course, this happened and it called into question everything that we do in healthcare, ushering change that has been overdue for decades. But you're not here to watch me talk about a whole bunch of easy to look up stats and show some pretty maps. And I do love my maps. You're here because you want to invest in the space, but I have to disappoint you because I don't really have a really good answer, because it really, really depends in a place that's as broad and as complex as healthcare is. So it really depends on your own preferences as an investor. Do you like to invest directly into deals or indirect through syndicates, or sorry, direct through syndicates or by yourself, or indirect through funds? What sort of risk return profile are you looking for? Are you looking for, regular dividends? Are you looking to blow it out of the park? Are you willing to lose everything? How large of a check are you willing to write? How patient are you? Do you need your capital accessible immediately, or can you wait a decade? And what are your motivations? Are they financial? Are they non-financial? Are you impact oriented? Are you doing this out of interest? Are you doing this because it strategically aligns with your work or your business? And then how comfortable are you, and do you have experience investing in healthcare or the particular subsector, which can be very, very different from another subsector in healthcare? And where do you get your deals from? Are you plugged in, or do you rely on a network of brokers to try to cut through the noise for you, and so on? It also depends on the deal itself. Is there a particular area of technology or medicine or part of the body or part of the supply chain that you are really focused or interested in? Are you looking for a ready-made solution, an idea, a proof of concept? Do you like to invest in your own backyard or in faraway lands for diversity? And what sort of team are you looking for? Are you looking for a team that reminds you of yourself when you were younger? Are you looking for a complete, balanced science or commercial team? Are you looking for diversity? And what sort of business model do you like in your deals? B2B, B2B2C, B2C, B2G, and so on. And do you like your companies to IPO or be acquired by a large player? And what sort of governance structures do you expect, or what role do you expect? Do you want to sit on the board? Are you happy having a fairly generic convertible note, or do you want preference shares? What sort of structures do you like in your deal? And then it also depends on which macro trend you're trying to target. Are you targeting the improvement of telemedicine? The increased importance of high-grade telemetry and specialization? You're looking for new business, care, or payment models within existing infrastructure, or are you looking to take advantage of this massive shift from acute, event-driven events in healthcare to continuous and preventative care? And of course, with all these complicated, increasingly technological components talking to one another, there is a need for greater security and integrity of the data. And of course, they have to talk to each other effectively using the same language. Or do you want to really go where no healthcare exists today, or where a whole branch of medicine doesn't exist, and you want to be the first to play in that area? I had a complicated graphical slide that put a lot of what I communicated in the previous slide into context through kind of an example model, quote unquote, good deal. But I realized it burned like 5 minutes and didn't really talk about anything too tangible about healthcare specifically. So maybe I'll put it in a future talk. And I do realize that I have been talking about healthcare investment in a quite abstract way without really defining it. So what is healthcare anyways? And I look at it as really 4 pillars. You have basic sanitation and hygiene, the things that we do and what we eat, the health systems with doctors, nurses, clinics, hospitals that we all know and love, and then the advanced research that develops medical treatments, diagnostics, and cures. In the interest of time, I'll focus on the right 2 pillars. There's always the complaint today that healthcare is not patient-centric. Our friends at Omada Health put together a nice chart where you see a lot of the activities are quite concentrated on the providers. And at the same time, you have this rosy picture painted by healthcare futurists where everything will be patient-centric, we'll handle everything remotely, and it'll be with personalized gadgets with little need for hospitals. And while I agree that healthcare will definitely shift earlier into the patient, I think we'll end up with something in the middle. I mean, you'll still have your patient here, you'll have your telemedicine, your wearables that will provide increased telemetry and point of care diagnostics. But we'll also have still the need for more involved diagnostics and decision making at physical infrastructure sites of care like pharmacies, clinics, or lab or radiology clinics. And then in between the two, we will have the delivery of products like pharmaceuticals to your home, the provision of healthcare services at home, as well as increased health and screening happening at the workplace or at the school. I also strongly believe in the further rise of an intermediary layer of specialty care or specialized care that doesn't have the large resource footprint of the full hospital, where common surgeries or procedures will take place in a more industrialized or I guess, assembly line sort of way, both across developed and developing markets. Aravind Eye Hospital in India is a great example of this. And then in the US, AmSurg is a great example of this as well. And then finally, we still, of course, will have hospitals, but they'll be reserved for the most complex and riskiest procedures. And what we'll have, which we don't really have very well today, is a set of layers that connect all of this together across payments, data, and coordination of care. And so where are the opportunities in all of this? Well, we will definitely need clinical grade telemetry, so sensors that give you data that doctors can really make informed decisions off of without actually having to see you, as telemedicine calls right now are glorified Skype calls. Faster, better, cheaper point of care diagnostics, the improvement of telemedicine and the wide scale adoption of digital therapeutics, that is being able to treat a disease without actually having to take a drug or anything. Tech-enabled delivery services for sure, tech-enabled at-home services, and increased screening and monitoring technologies that will help with your productivity and wellness at work. So things that reduce absenteeism, reduce stress or measure stress, increase presenteeism, and so on and so forth. We will still, of course, need our brick and mortar infrastructure, but they'll increasingly have technology integrated into them, as well as the ability to communicate across each piece. Standardized operating procedures will be really important, as this is traditionally a very fragmented, thus inefficient sector. And at the core of all this will be all the software solutions. You'll have, third-party administrators will be quite important in all this because they are the gateways to the data. Right now, they're largely used for adjudicating claims and looking for fraud in insurance, but increasingly they'll be important in medical management and linking to other components of this new digital healthcare age. There'll be fintech opportunities in payments, throwing in the buzzwords of AI and analytics. I really hope we'll get beyond just looking at a doctor's calendar into more proper case management and true care coordination. And of course, underlying all of this, scalable, robust, structured, doctor and patient friendly health information systems that will really serve as the central data repository and the ability to kind of glean insights as well as predict things and looking things beyond just a single patient into a whole population. We will still need, of course, the quote unquote hard medical devices and biotechnologies, and the more expensive ones will, of course, and the more involved ones will, of course, see the light of day more in the specialty centers and hospitals. And really, it's going to be the light devices, diagnostics, and simple drugs that you'll see at the primary care level. And this is definitely not exhaustive. I mean, we are just scratching the surface with the potential opportunities, although I hope it's helpful to kind of paint a picture of where there may be some interesting places to play. So you might be wondering, where have we played? So within our fund, we've probably been a little bit biased towards the left side of this slide, given the regulatory and market entry barriers are a little bit lower and the unit economics are a bit more affordable to your patients and your payers that are really trying to shift care earlier as well to avoid um, the access and affordability challenges that you have more towards the right, at least in the markets in which we play. Um, you know, there certainly is merit to playing more to the right side, and you'll certainly potentially get higher returns given the superior individual unit economics of, say, a $200,000 per dose drug versus what you'd see on the left. But you also see a lot higher risk, longer development times, and competition from the traditional life sciences VC sector that's invested billions in this space. As an angel investor, I've played along a similar theme as well. And, while there's a lot of icons on this slide, we are just scratching the surface. I mean, there's so much more work to be done. And you might also be wondering, how can I as an investor get started? And the simplest way is really find someone in healthcare that you really respect or resonate with. It can be a news source. It can be a particular startup that you want to get to know better. It could be an investor, and just see what they put out. See what they talk about. See if they have a newsletter, if they publish papers, blogs, etc. Or if you want to start, putting your money to work, you can always invest in funds or ETFs whose objectives and philosophy align with your own. But given everyone and their uncle seems to be starting a health tech fund, buyer beware. Please make sure they do know what they're doing. And if you want to start getting more involved directly in investment opportunities, you can always join a health tech angel club like Future Health in Singapore or Medical Angels in Australia, as an example. And if you would rather invest your time than your money, you can always volunteer at some health tech accelerators or incubators, or join a startup's advisory board or board of directors, because often health tech startups lack that sort of real hardened commercial and business experience, which most investors, having gotten to a point of their lives where they can be investors, have really the ability to help these companies here. And if you really, really like a company so much, you could always just join it yourself. And the potential upside is probably much, much higher than investing any sort of money into the startup, provided it works, of course. You might also finally be wondering what's next for us. We were quite lucky. During COVID last year, we managed to close our first fund. And believe it or not, we're actually nearly finished investing it. And it seems like the thesis is still working out. And what we'll be doing over the next year or so is really looking at what the startups and investors really need and really want in order to figure out how a potential second fund might look like. So with that, I wanted to thank you again for your time and attention. And my contact details are here on the slide. If you have any questions, comments, or strong opinions, love to have philosophical debates, and wish you a wonderful day ahead.